Good morning. It's Saturday, another special edition of the Zogby Report, Real and Unscripted. This is actually our 79th. Jeremy and I take an issue, generally the big issue of the week, and spin on it for a while, often from different points of view. Good morning, Jared. How are you?
Hey, good morning. How's it going?
It's going okay. And I think maybe our topic this week is an obvious one, but it's of course our Governor Andrew Cuomo, and what exactly may be going on there. And what I'd like to do is do two things. One is to, as everyone else is doing, talk about the immediate situation. What's happening? What are the implications? Why is he in trouble? When does he leave? And what happens next? That's the obvious stuff. Although we may have some fresh ideas on that. The second topic, though, related to that is the broader implication of all this. And just to tease our audience a little bit, is there such a thing as a universal set of values? Can we strip away a Republican guy did this, but a Democratic guy did the same thing? If I'm a Republican, it's okay if the Republican guy did it, but it's bad if the Democrat did it, and vice versa. Is there a common set of values that we Americans, in this case New Yorkers, agree upon? That'll give you and me some time to think about that. But what's going on with Andrew Cuomo? I think I may have said this on an earlier podcast, and so forgive me for repeating the old Southern Louisiana saying that if you twist a chicken's head off, it'll run around for a minute headless, and everybody else knows that the chicken is dead except the chicken. And I think that that's an apt sort of metaphor for this. There is no way the governor can survive this, and I'm going to speak categorically about that. When you assess it, he's got 11 accusers. These are not whimpering 19-year-old interns, and that's not to demean 19-year-old interns, but these are women of substance. These are strong women. These are women that did not ask to be put in this situation, and these are women who are strong and have decided that whether it's in their personal best interests or not, that the most powerful man in New York State should not get away with, at the very least, boorish behavior, and at the very most, criminal behavior and excessive bullying. With that said, the Attorney General's report was detailed. It was damning. If you read all 156 pages, you were dumbstruck by just how horrible this situation was, and the workplace in the governor's office has been. And finally, what I would suggest is that, as we've said before, there's no ally here. You know, even in the closing days of the Nixon administration, there were still some people willing to vote against impeachment, a few here and there willing to speak up on behalf of the president's behalf. But finally, it took a famous walk from the Capitol to the White House by the three senior Republicans at the time: the Senate Minority Leader, the House Minority Leader, and Barry Goldwater, kind of the dean of the party, to walk to the White House and say, "Mr. President, you're killing us. You're killing the party. You're killing the country. You've got to go." While there isn't anyone making that literal walk today, clearly it's impossible to find anybody saying, "Oh, give Andrew a chance. He's a good guy. He's a friend of mine." There's nobody there. So to date, the president has said that he should resign. The Speaker of the Assembly says not only should he resign, but he doesn't even have a majority of Democratic assemblymen. The Senate majority leader has said the same thing. 12 Gannett newspapers, that's all the newspapers they have in New York State, have front page editorial headlined "Cuomo must go," and there's more. So in the immediate, how does this play out? What do you think the scenario is? Is there any chance that Andrew Cuomo survives this? And if he doesn't survive this, what's likely to happen? Is he going to resign? Is he going to go down in flames and take everybody with him? What do you think?
Well, when we talked about this ago, it was either late April or in the middle of May. I remember saying that if there was one person that would go up against the mounting pressure, and at that time the president hadn't said anything. It was Schumer, maybe Gillibrand,
Yes.
maybe both senators, and Pelosi, and a whole host of others. Now it's the president. But I said back in May, if there's anybody who has a larger than life ego that would just push all that to the side and move forward, it's him. And I think my answer stays the same. I don't see how he's able to avoid this and not have to step down with even more mounting pressure. I would imagine that there'll continue to be mounting pressure, but if there is somebody who will ignore that and will push forward, it's him.
Let's look at the political implications. So here it is, we're 21, and of course we have the races in 2022. We have a congressional delegation up for grabs. We have the governor, the attorney general, the comptroller, all up for grabs. We have both houses of the state legislature. It is a Democratic sweep. And at this point in time, a very weakened Republican Party. I happen to know firsthand, but it doesn't take a rocket science to say that having a governor who is toxic at this point at the top of the ticket not only risks breathing life into that Republican Party if they're able to find a star to run, but also seriously hurts the Democrats trying to run for election and re-election in 2022. So behind all of these comments that you're hearing are not simply moral judgments or statements about alleged criminal behavior, but there's a political calculus here. How do we remove this guy before he really brings down the party with him? And that's an important consideration. He may already have done that. I think what's substantial here is, and we've talked about this, this is a fellow who said in his, I think, ham-handed rebuttal after the Attorney General's report, I've devoted 39 years to public service. That goes back to when he was 24. And he was the chief of staff to his father. One arguably could say the junkyard dog to his father. He was mean. He was a bully. He was a 24-year-old talking to 60 and 70-year-olds in a very demeaning and bullying way. And now, after all these decades, he finds himself friendless, alone. It's hard to figure out his game plan. In Trump's case, had it played out this way and was not so partisan, in Trump's case, I would have said, well, he's holding on to the Oval Office, and he's doing that because he he's using that as leverage to prevent himself from being prosecuted in the criminal justice system. Frankly, I don't see how it benefits Andrew Cuomo to stay on one more day in the governor's mansion. The more he does that, I think he's going to be prosecuted in criminal courts anyway, whether he's found guilty or not. You know, there may be technicalities here or there, but I think every day that he stays in office, he prolongs this. And as he has pointed out, 63-year-old man, he's got to be concerned about his legacy. Is this the only thing that he wants to be remembered for? And right now, it's hard to see him being remembered for anything else.
Well, I believed going back to 2013 that he had higher aspirations. To me, it was clear when he was pushing the SAFE Act, and he got that pushed through, and I believe that was about 2012, 2013. He was already well known, but he started to emerge as larger than life around that point. And to me, it was obvious that he had high aspirations, and I'm talking about the presidential aspirations. He certainly had it, in my view. He had that presidential thing, or at least he was on the path to cultivate and develop that. And I mean, having already served in HUD under Clinton and then governor, right? That's just kind of the next logical step. Is maybe he would have gone for Senate, or maybe he would have gone straight for running for president. But he certainly had the aura about himself, and I think it's very difficult for him to come to terms. Especially look at how much he was elevated during the pandemic. I mean, he basically became the Empire State's version of FDR.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Fireside chats daily. So this was a man who could taste the prospects of being a serious presidential contender, and now his whole world is coming crashing down, and it's just very difficult for him to accept that. So
let's move on to the second part of the conversation. There may be something going on that's different here, and that is that let's go back a ways. Jack Kennedy. Okay, maybe the general public didn't know about Jack Kennedy's private life, but they soon forgot, or soon did know about it, but they were willing to forget about it. He was a good man, and he inspired us, people would say. And you would hear that from Democrats and Republicans. On the flip side, Lyndon Johnson was boorish in his behavior, extremely heavy-handed in policy making and policies, kept a dossier on senators and loved to read it as bedtime reading. But it was well known that he could take those, in fact, he did take those dossiers out and use them not as leverage, but as a sledgehammer against anyone who opposed his policies. But it was okay as long as he was our guy and he was pushing good things through. Nixon, well, everybody else did it, but Nixon got caught, and so on. Bill Clinton, you know, leave him alone. He's a good president. What do we care about his private behavior? Those who love Donald Trump, and continue to love Donald Trump, despite whatever kind of man he is. So I wonder if what we have for the first time in a while is a burgeoning consensus, not just a consensus on an issue, but a consensus on a common, agreed upon set of morality and principles. We're seeing clearly revulsion on the part of Republicans. that would be, if for no other reason, partisan. But among Democrats, instead of excusing the governor because he's been good on women's issues, he's been good on minority issues, he's been good on economic development issues, he's been good, shall we say, on COVID. Instead, what Democrats are saying is that this guy is killing us, and he's hurting our image among women and liberal and progressive voters. But is this a burgeoning consensus on moral principles that we're seeing? Is this something that could be a game changer?
Well, I guess we'll have to see. So let's assume that Cuomo will step down. At some point, it's looking like he'll have to. And so who replaces him is Hochul. And if I'm correct, and correct me if I'm wrong, but she would be even further to the left of Cuomo. Cuomo has been a progressive, but I think she's a well-rounded, all-around progressive. And Cuomo kind of appealed to both moderates as well as progressives, right?
Yeah, Kathy Hochul from Buffalo, who's been around, incidentally. She was in Congress, but she also worked as a staffer in Congress and is a well-known name out in Western New York. She is really well known as a moderate within the party. And so you can expect that there will be a progressive challenge to her, that there will be primaries. Whatever it is she does, she's going to have to consolidate the Democratic base. But she also has a very winning way about her. There's something like another famous Buffalonian, Tim Russert. There's something that's very real and authentic about Kathy Hochul. Unlike an Andrew Cuomo, who's seemed to have grown up in the governor's mansion, and a child of privilege and entitlement. That is not Kathy Hochul's story at all. Dad was a steel worker, and then he founded a software company, but he was essentially an ethnic Irish steel worker in the Buffalo area.
So that it depends on how she's able to consolidate the party, and that's question number one. And then question number two, in terms of achieving that bipartisan political atmosphere in New York State, which we haven't had in a very long time, really comes down to, will the opposition, will the Republicans accept the let's say the narrative of Cuomo being removed and prosecuted based on the sexual harassment cases, and then say, okay, we got him out, we're fine with that? Or is there still a drive to bring to light the nursing home scandal, which I think it's fair to say is while on the one hand, while the sexual harassment cases, about a dozen of them, are horrific, the nursing home scandal, we're getting into the loss of human life. Are they able to put that behind them and say, all right, we'll accept this bargain here where he's got to go and it's based on mounting cases of sexual harassment, or do they feel that justice needs to be served with this other major crime that seems to be swept under the carpet?
That is a very good point. That could be what the governor is trying to leverage right now. That issue of nursing homes is pretty much out of the hands of our state attorney general, Letitia James, and is in the hand of the U.S. Justice Department, which will, be governed on its own schedule, and its own purpose. My gut sense is that the U.S. Justice Department will continue to go after this issue. It is very serious. In fact, in some ways, it's the more serious of the two scandals, because lives have been lost, and there's been a cover-up, allegedly, of the numbers of lives that are lost. But I don't see the Justice Department dropping that at all. Yeah. So the governor is in some serious trouble.
But what do you think about the New York State Republicans? That will they put that behind them and focus on the victory of Cuomo leaving based on prosecution regarding sexual harassment, or will they still want to bring this to the forefront as a way to show that they're a better alternative in New York State?
If the Democrats can get Andrew Cuomo out, move forthrightly, get him out in time, so they can set the table for next year's elections, it's almost immaterial what the Republicans do, simply because the Democrats have a super majority in the Assembly. In fact, the Assembly is almost irrelevant. And on the Senate side, this is the largest majority the Democrats have had, the state Senate side. And remember, they don't have any of the top 4 positions: comptroller, attorney general, governor, lieutenant governor. So the only thing that can bring any or breathe any life in the state Republican Party is if Andrew Cuomo hangs around and hurts the Democrats' chances. Other than that, there is no big name and proven vote getter to run for governor next year. The party is in disarray and in bad shape. You have to be able to not simply raise money, but to field good candidates, and above all, you have to win some seats. And they've been on a losing roll. So right now, the man who's going to decide the future of the Democratic Party is clearly the governor. And the issue is whether he can put the needs of the political party over his ego. That's the fly in the ointment here.
Yeah. I mean, let's not forget there's another important element here, that's independence in New York State.
Yes,
and they help to make that supermajority in the Democratic leadership and party rule. It would be interesting to see if there's any kind of reckoning within the independents.
So a Marist poll that came out literally right after Attorney General James's report showed that 59% of New York voters wanted the governor to leave immediately. That included 52% of Democrats. And I dare say that was, within 48 hours of this story breaking. I think going back into the field now after this is marinated a while would probably show even bigger numbers. So clearly, overwhelming majorities of both Republicans and the independents want the governor to leave. So it's hard to see where he has any political base on this at all.
Agreed. Very much agreed.
So I think we've aired it out, and we'll continue to watch and wonder if during our next podcast we'll be talking about a very brief post-mortem on Governor Cuomo, or this continues. But there's certainly other issues, and we'll be back next week to talk about them.
Yeah, I have a strong sense that the next 3 to 5 weeks are going to bring some pretty big events, and we'll have a lot to talk about beyond Cuomo.
Okay, sounds good. Bye, everybody.
Take care.